Boom.
Hello.
Here we be. We are officially live now, and we are going to have a lot of fun today. I'm very excited for this one. Rachel, you're going to be the first person that I have here that I've never actually met in person prior to us sitting down.
I'm honored to
Yes.
be here.
So,
Thank you so much for having me.
So you're unique in many ways, and we'll get into all that too. But yeah, we had a great little conversation before you came in, chatted for a little bit, and I really appreciate you. You drove a long way to get here, so
yes.
I can't thank you enough for that.
I have an electric car, so it's not that.
Oh, you do?
It's
Okay.
not that bad.
What do you have?
I have a VW ID4.
Okay.
Highly recommend. It's fantastic. It's
All
like
right.
half the price of a Tesla, but has like all the bells and whistles. I love it.
So I actually have a Tesla. Well, I should say
you could have two ID4s.
My wife has a Tesla. Let's put it that way. But it's funny. I don't know if you get this. So we're going to get off on a tangent for just a second, but I hear a lot from people about with those cars, like, oh, you're tree hugging hippie trying to save the environment. Like, look, I'm not opposed to that. I think it's good. But if you look into where you get batteries from and how, electricity is produced, there's all kinds of conflicting, issues with comes to the environment. But it is the most fun car that I've ever driven in my entire life.
It's zippy, right?
It's like a video game.
It is. It's like, and then it has the what is it? The like go-kart mode where when you let your foot off the gas, it stops. It's crazy.
Yes. It's that's basically when I explain to people, it's like a souped up golf cart.
Yeah. A golf cart. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
so like when you go and you take your foot off the gas, it just stops. I mean, it doesn't stop, like dead stop, but it slows down. What I haven't figured out, because I haven't looked, and I don't know if your car does this, but it was one of my wife's questions right in the very beginning. She was like, well, when we take our foot off the gas and we slow down, is it brake lights? Like, how do the people know behind us that we're slowing down? Do you know?
No, but now I have to go do like a social experiment with
now
my
you gotta
husband.
go try it out.
I gotta go figure it out.
Yes, you have to film from the rear to see if you're slowing down or not.
Yes, I'm like never even thought of that.
Yes.
Wow, your wife's a genius.
Yeah, well, we call her Safety Susan because it's what she's mostly concerned with at all times. Like, if you're not buckled up in her car, we're not going anywhere. That's just how it works.
Fair.
All right, so sorry about the electric car tangent there for a second.
It's important stuff.
That's right. So this is Rachel Grunn. She is joining me today. She is a realtor with Reflect Real Estate, amongst many things. She hosts a podcast called Good Investing. She is a current former model, something along those lines. Okay. Yeah. When I was stalking you before we went through, I was looking through your Facebook page, just kind of seeing what you're into. We're going to talk about horse stuff too, because very interested in how you got into that world, because I have a lot of experience in that world, believe it or not. But I saw you like on the Wall Street Journal, like you had like a picture spread in there for this nice little fall outfit thing.
Yeah.
It's impressive. And you traveled the world for doing this as well. London, Paris, kind of been all over the place. So that's fascinating. But we're going to start with, because this is the Texas Real Estate and Finance Podcast, we're going to start with some stuff related to real estate. Now, you have a very similar situation as myself in that you are a real estate couple, you and your husband, Dylan, correct?
Dylan.
Dylan was a loan officer like I am currently, now is a realtor like you. You guys are a team together. My wife is a realtor. So we are all like existing in this wonderful market that we're living in right now. Yes. The great thing about being in the same business is that when things are good, things are amazing. And when things are bad, things are not so great, and you got to adjust and you got to prepare and all that kind of stuff. So I'm curious, how did you guys get into the business together? And then, what are y'all's experience right now with this market and where things are going?
So we got in the business together back in 2020 during COVID. I think COVID for a lot of people was like a pressure cooker.
Right.
So it was like, what we're doing working, or do we need to pivot?
Right.
And at the time we were both working in the entertainment industry. So Dylan and I actually met on a film set.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
We were actually playing a couple getting a divorce, which is hilarious.
How wonderful. How beautiful.
So we worked through all that stuff up front. And, but yeah, so we were in the entertainment industry in LA.
Okay.
Work just dried up overnight. I mean, you can't work from home when you're a model and an actor.
Oh, because of COVID and you're doing modeling and acting, it goes away. Gotcha.
Can't do it from home. So At that point, I grew up in a real estate family.
Okay.
And at this point, let's see, 3 years ago, I had, oh gosh, like 6 years of investing experience. Now
Okay.
it's about 9
hmm
in real estate.
hmm
So I already had like properties
You
and
were familiar with
investments.
it.
Oh, very.
Yeah.
So whenever we were like, you know what, we want to start a family. We don't want to live paycheck to paycheck anymore.
Right.
We don't want like our income to be dependent on like something like crazy like a pandemic.
Right.
So we made the difficult decision to move back to Dallas.
Okay. So y'all are both
I'm
from here. Okay.
Dylan's not. So
Okay.
Dylan's from New York City.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
I'm from Dallas. That's where we met.
Gotcha.
So I'm from Dallas, and so we made the decision to move back here for family
Yeah.
and work. And then we were like, you know what do we know that we could do? And real estate just made sense.
Yeah.
So that's when we both decided to jump in. He started out as a loan officer,
Okay.
and then my business kind of took off in 2021. And so
You got to follow the gravy train.
I
Yes.
said, come on, I need some help.
Yeah.
Jump on in. The water's warm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but the market has shifted.
Yes.
No secret. In the past 6 months, it's been dramatic.
Mhm.
So it's great. Like you said, it's difficult because you're both in the same business.
Yes.
So when it hurts, you really feel the squeeze.
Mhm.
But you can commiserate together.
Yes.
And you can also workshop and brainstorm together. So
Right.
we've found ways to kind of take the market by the horns and pivot and still find lots of success in business, and we're just as busy now as we have been. So
what are you guys doing that you feel like is kind of carrying you over to next year, because we're coming up on 2023 and everybody's saying which also is concerning because everybody's saying it, but you see a lot of places that next year could be rough for a lot of things. I don't necessarily think it'll be that bad for us. I think this year will be, when we look back at the end of 2023, I feel like we will see 2022 as like the really, downside of it. And I think you'll start to see an uptrend in 2023. But overall, the economy going into recession and all that kind of stuff. What are you guys doing being in real estate to try to prepare yourself to be in the best position possible? So when the market does start to turn around a little bit, you're in front of people more than otherwise you would be.
Yeah. So, man, that's a really good question. And it is kind of like looking into a crystal ball. No one knows.
No, we're
People
all
can
guessing.
speculate,
Yeah.
but no one actually knows.
Right.
So, right now, what we're doing is we're just getting creative.
Okay.
So we have technology on our side, and with technology comes a lot of interesting programs and a lot of awesome information and education, the opportunity to educate on a large scale.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe like 15 years ago, you had to get on the phone and call
Yes.
all your clients, all your sphere to update them on like, hey, I know interest rates are getting higher and that's scary, but these are some options that you have.
Right.
It's not 20% down and you have to pay this interest rate. You could buy it down, you could get concessions, you could refinance at a later date. Like there's so many different ways to go around it, right? So right now it's awesome because we're just creating lots of content for education.
Yes.
And we are just pumping it out there. I mean, probably twice a week, I post some sort of educational bit on my Instagram and Facebook just to show people like, listen, there's no way you could have known this unless I told you, right? Because you're not a real estate professional, but I am.
Right.
You're not talking to lenders every day, but I am.
Right.
So I can give you the best information that's out there right now. And, tell people like, I know it's scary to buy right now, but there's actually no better time than to buy right now, especially if you don't have lots of cash in the bank.
It's funny. I think there's a shift that's happening, especially in our space with real estate, where or really any kind of, if you're, I hate to say selling, but if you're in the business of selling and presenting yourself as somebody who is, straight commission based, and this is what you're doing, the concept of how to sell has changed, and I don't know that everybody's moved in that direction. And if you're 29 years old. Okay. I'm 44. So we got quite a bit of separation there, and I'm just learning this myself, but I do find myself gravitating to paying attention to what younger people in my industry are doing versus myself. And I'm not even that old in the industry. There's way more older folks than me, but there's this change from, hey, I'm going to take great care of your needs. I'm going to, call me at this number to list your house. I'm going to tell you all these positive things about why I'm so good at my job. And I've been in the business for 25 years and all of this stuff. Right. And I think there's a not a misconception, but it's just starting to shift in the other direction to realize that most consumers these days don't want to be sold things.
No.
right?
No.
They want to be educated.
Yes.
They want to be told, hey, this is how you do this. This is how you do this. I mean, we're living, probably past moving on the age of information. So information is important. And when we are in a business where, unless you do it every single day because it changes so rapidly, you don't know what's going on. So you're not aware of what's happening on a day-to-day basis or even a month-to-month or year-to-year basis in our industry because it changes so much. So I think there's such a value on providing people with education without the expectation of getting something in return.
100%. And I think the days of like door knocking, cold calling, stick your foot in the door type
Right.
sales, I mean, it's just such a turnoff.
Yes.
It is to me. It is to everyone else. I always say I want to bring value to
Right.
someone before I ever ask them for
Right.
business.
Yes.
And then you're also positioning yourself as an expert when
Right.
you're bringing value. But here's the thing, people's attention spans these days are
Short.
so brief.
Mhm.
So you have to be able to deliver that education and that value in a concise and simple way.
Mhm.
So that's really what we've been endeavoring to do. How can we totally blow people's minds in 45 seconds?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's hard because you have to come up with creative new ways, and you have to be engaging. People have to want to, you got to use humor. You have to use, nowadays, especially with video being what it is, little editing tricks and all these kind of things. And if you're not familiar with that stuff or you don't use it on a regular basis, there's a strong learning curve. And I think it scares a lot of people away from doing those type of things because they feel like their ignorance is making them nervous about, what to do and how to do it. And so then they just shy away from it completely. And that's why I think it's so important, if you've been in this business for a long period of time and and you're not going anywhere, you got to keep selling stuff, then you need to start paying attention to people like yourself that are doing interesting, creative things to make yourself an expert in your field. So that way, when people think about anything related to real estate or finance or whatever the case may be, they're going to think about you in some form or another.
Right.
It's kind of like I was talking with somebody else the other day about this, but just something simple like a CRM, which is your, customer retention management software. So you're putting someone's phone number, email address into a database, and they're going to send out the silly emails, the birthdays and the anniversaries and all that kind of stuff. And from the surface, you look at that, especially, like, well, I get 8 million emails a day. I'm not going to, but it's another touch in a weird way, because when I'm going through, and I'm this way because I'm OCD with my email, I go through and delete everything all the time.
Me too.
But I very rarely unsubscribe for stuff.
Yeah.
Like very rarely, because that takes an extra step, and I'm not I'm willing to swipe and delete, but I'm not willing to go in there, put my email in, why am I leaving, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not saying it's good to spam people. What I am saying is that action of swiping your name and deleting your email, it's still your name and maybe even your face that shows up in their feed, in their life, a little bit on Monday, a little bit on Wednesday, a little bit on Friday. They may not buy a house or one mortgage loan for years, but they see you constantly.
Right.
And that's the goal, right?
Yep. Exactly. Even if it's subconscious, even if they don't realize.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You're trying to be there in front of someone.
Those touches. Yep.
So then you also have a podcast that you started, and we were just talking about, we're kind of on, I've got about 31 episodes here, and you're about the same.
I just released 32.
So there you go. We're right in line. So what was the, you have a co-host with it. And so how did that all come about?
Okay, so this kind of ties in really nicely to this squeeze that we're feeling in the marketplace as well. So let me go back real quick to when I started. And so our podcast is all about multifamily syndication, multifamily investing. A syndicate is just a fancy word for like crowdfunding real estate.
Okay.
So we are essentially crowdfunding real estate.
You're like a private REIT.
Yeah.
Yes.
Similar, but better.
Yes.
And I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
But anyway, so my business partner and I, her name is Andrea Swick, and we met at a multifamily event a little over a year ago.
Okay.
And we just bonded on the fact that we are both so passionate about education. Again, because education is a great equalizer. No matter where you come from, where you've been, where you're going, knowledge is available for everyone. And we love to make it like free and accessible, right? Yeah. So that's why we started Good Investing, because we're like, how are people going to know that there's a better way to invest and to fortify your portfolio for something like a recession or economic downturn that we're experiencing right now, right?
Right.
So I started investing in multifamily syndication 7 years ago.
Okay.
My mom found out about it. And here's the thing. multifamily syndication is very protected by or regulated, excuse me, regulated by the SEC, the
Okay.
Security and Exchange Commission.
Okay.
Not the NCAA conference, the SEC. And so for this reason,
That's funny. You're gonna say, we're not talking about basketball, guys. We're
not talking about basketball.
talking about securities and
yeah, yeah.
exchanges. Yes.
Yeah, because I'm like, we're regulated by the SEC, and they're like, what?
LSU tells you what to do. Yeah.
But because of bad apples like Bernie Madoff, right?
Yep.
So they really cracked down. I
And
know.
what's the other guy? FTX? No. Yeah, it was FTX. What was the
Yeah, that
Sam
was just
Bankman?
recently. Yeah.
Sam Bankman-Fried?
Yep,
Yes.
that's right. So anyway, so for that reason, we're not allowed to advertise our offerings. And for that reason, there's not a lot of knowledge out there publicly available.
Gotcha.
There's no HGTV shows.
Right.
There's just very limited information. And a lot of people think that commercial real estate investing, because we're buying like $40 million complexes, like
Right.
huge. People think that's reserved for people
Ultra
like
wealthy.
Warren Buffett. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And they think one person buys it. It's like, no, it's like 100 plus investors that all go in together, you
Yep.
know? So started doing that about 7 years ago. My mom completely changed her life. She was able to retire in 5 years.
Wow.
Just through multifamily investing. And I just caught the bug. I just started doing it and invested in a couple, and then started doing it on the active side where I'm actively going out and finding the properties, getting them under contract, etc. And it's just completely changed our financial future because it's entirely passive.
That's amazing. I see I'm always torn with stuff like this a little bit because operating in the world that we do with real estate, I feel like we're in a place right now where the dream of home ownership is kind of drying up for people,
Yeah.
Especially young people. And the reasons for that, I never put like intentional maliciousness on it. It's just kind of how things go, and that's what a lot of life is just how the stuff works out. But what I'm seeing nowadays, and I even just read something right before we came in, housing starts for single family residences are way down. I read today, Dallas Morning News did an article where they said that it's a 33% decline in housing starts in single family residences in DFW. And that's the lowest it's fallen in over like 12 years, like
Wow.
since 2009. So, in one thing that's not a good thing because, this is the path to wealth for most Americans. And, it has been for a very long time. But what has gone up and what is going up is multifamily, is apartment complexes, condos, townhomes, these kind of things. And the way I always feel about all things is you have to understand what the situation is, whether you can change it or not, whether you can do whatever you want to do about it, who knows. But if you're a young person, right, who I want to buy a house, I want to own my own home, but I don't have a down payment, or I don't have enough for a down payment. The houses are $300,000-$400,000. I can only afford a $200,000, whatever. Well, there are ways that you can invest your money in small doses and start to grow that money to put yourself in a position to deal with, the higher cost of home ownership as it goes down the road. And one of those things, I think, is the multifamily space.
Huge.
Because, I mean, you tell me, because I don't know, but, for what you're doing with that, I would imagine that the initial investment, I mean, I'm sure there's a vetting process and stuff you have to go through, but I would imagine there's probably an entry level that you can start off with that doesn't cost you a ton of money, and then you can kind of grow your size from there. Would that be true?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's definitely less than a lot of people would spend on an investment property or even down payment on a home.
Right.
And we do accept accredited and non-accredited investors, which
Okay.
is great because it means really anyone can invest
Right.
that, has investment experience. And so our minimums are typically $50,000.
Okay.
Again, probably less than an investment property
Yep.
because you're having to pay 20% down on that.
Closing costs and everything
Closing
else.
costs and all that kind of fun stuff.
Yep.
And what is so cool about multifamily right now is that it does kind of shelter my husband and I from a little bit of the blow on the residential side.
Yeah,
Because
there's a growth
like
there.
you said, when residential starts to suffer or slow, you see a huge boom in demand on the multifamily.
Yes.
Whether it's temporary or permanent housing, some people are moving into multifamily just to wait out a hike on interest. Other people are moving in because they frankly can't afford anything else. And rent is one of the only variable expenses they can control because they can't control gas or food, right? So you are seeing a huge, and this is the other thing about, investing in multifamily. especially during an economic downturn, is how how it's valued.
Mhm.
So I know you've bought commercial properties before. We're sitting in one,
Yep.
and so you know that in commercial real estate, the value is based on income. It's not based on comps.
Right.
So right now, your home is worth what your neighbor sells for.
Correct.
And when you're seeing neighbors start and other owners in your neighborhood start to cut prices to sell their home, it's affecting your value. So in commercial real estate, as long as we are keeping expenses low and keeping rents steady or increasing them periodically, we are gaining value.
Right.
So for example, on a 200 unit complex, right? If we were to increase rent $50 across all units, okay, on 200 units, and it was at a 5% cap. Now, I'm not going to go into cap rates, but a 5% cap, I would say, is probably a little bit higher than it is in Dallas right now.
Okay.
So pretty standard cap rate, $50 increase, 200 units. You have just added $2.4 million in value for $50 rent increase
Because of the revenue.
because of the revenue,
Yep.
because it's a formula. And so with that same $50 rent increase, if you owned a rental property, you would get $50 extra a month and no change in value.
That's it. Right. Your
Right.
value doesn't matter.
It's economies of scale.
Yeah.
You know, so for me, I mean, it's just, and like you were saying, it is similar to a REIT. However, in a REIT, you don't actually own real estate.
Right. You
You're
just
buying
own a
shares
piece
of a company.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So with this, our passive investors are actually purchasing equity in the property.
Right.
So they get the tax advantages. They get to know exactly where the property is, because in a REIT, you don't know where you're investing. You're just putting money
You're just
into
putting
a
it
pot.
into a group.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not liquid like a REIT is. I would say that's the difference. But for that reason, it means it's not volatile. So
Right.
we're not subjected to market volatility in the stock market and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Which is also great. But yeah, and then we do refinances on our properties because we buy value add. So value add is like when you're buying it, rehabbing it, right, and adding value. That way, you're forcing appreciation.
Right.
And so we'll do a refinance generally in year 2 or 3, return anywhere between 50 to 90% of our investors' original capital back to them. Now, that's a non-taxable event because it's a return of their capital, not a
Correct.
return on their capital.
Right.
They can then take that money and put it into another deal.
Yep.
And now their 20% annualized return
Yeah.
is a 40% annualized return.
And will you talk a little bit too about the lending side of it too? Because I think that's something that people don't understand when it comes to, and it's based on what you were saying a minute ago, how the property value is based off the revenue that it brings in, but that's also what the lending is based off of as well. The value of the property obviously is considered, but they're not looking at you as an individual as to whether or not you can, like for a house, if I'm evaluating someone's ability to purchase a home, I'm looking at their monthly income, I'm looking at their monthly expenses, and we're trying to determine whether or not it can fit within a predetermined ratio.
Yeah, and their tax return and all that. So
Correct.
their credit.
Yes.
So yeah, it's, oh my gosh, it's so nice because I take advantage of what's called bonus depreciation. So as you know, in the home that you own, you get to claim depreciation on it yearly. And that's on a 27.5-year schedule. I don't know why. I guess someone said 28, someone said 29, or someone said what, 27 and 28.
They paper, rock, scissors for it.
Yeah, I'm like 27.5 makes sense. So in multifamily, we hire a specialist to come in and actually itemize everything in the buildings and units and put them on a depreciation schedule. But we actually get to claim all of that in year 1.
Wow. So you get a really big.
We get huge tax write-offs, and we pass that on to our passive investors.
Right.
And they're able to use that depreciation benefit to offset their passive income. I mean, it's just game changing. So myself personally, I don't pay a lot of taxes. So I'm hoping that in 2022, I will actually pay no taxes. So for me, it's really hard to get a loan on a single family home.
Yes.
When I'm reporting $25,000 in income.
Yes.
So,
yes.
But I can be a part owner in a $40 million syndicate.
Yeah.
So here's the thing is the lender doesn't care what the passive
By the way,
investor's
it sounds so, I'm in a $40 million syndicate. You're like, whoa, what are you involved in?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, don't ask too many questions.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the lender, frankly, doesn't care on what the passive investor's financial situation is, what their income is, what their credit score, tax return. They don't care.
Right.
But our passive investors still get the opportunity to invest in real estate and get the benefits from that, even if they can't get a loan otherwise. So from the lending standpoint, we have what's called KPs, key principles.
Okay.
And so those are people that can actually show an asset statement totaling the price of the loan.
Right.
So we do leverage debt on everything. It's pretty standard agency loans, Freddie and Fannie, and then right now the leverage is pretty low. It's like 65-35 35, but I won't get into all that. But anyway, so they frankly, as long as there are key principles on the deal that have an asset statement or a bank statement totaling the cost of the loan, so like
Yeah.
$20 million or so, then it's all gravy. It's all good.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine on here recently. I've had him on a couple times actually, and he's just within the last, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 years, he's gotten heavily into. He does have an apartment complex, so he has a multi-unit. I say complex, it's like I think it's 10 units or something
That's
like
awesome.
that in Hillsborough, I think. But either way, we were just talking about leveraging assets when it comes to getting into real estate, especially on the investment side of things, not just commercial, but also residential as well. And, I was amazed just because it's always like you learn things, and when you hear it, you're like, well, I mean, I guess I knew that, but I didn't know that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like I if someone tells me like, okay, yeah, that makes sense, but then it doesn't really resonate, and you're like, wait a minute, why am I if I know that, then why the hell haven't I?
Yeah.
So he had bought a piece of property in, like I said, like Itasca or some small town. He bought it for like $4,000. Like it was in some sort of an estate sale, something. It was like maybe an acre and a half. It was dirt cheap. Came across it, paid cash for it, knew that the value actually, because he looked into it, the value was about $20,000. That's what it was worth. But it wasn't in high demand because of some of the limitations on what they could put on it. So, but that wasn't why he bought it. He bought it because he paid 4 and it was worth 20, and it added to his portfolio that he could leverage then to go buy other properties and not have as much cash come out of his pocket to be able to do so.
Right. Exactly.
And it's that kind of thing where you just go, wait a minute. Okay. So you bought this thing for no other purpose rather than using it as leverage. So that way you could go purchase other things.
Yep.
He's like, that's exactly what it was.
Yeah. Genius.
It's just like, okay, well, why don't more people do this kind of stuff?
It's so smart. And in commercial lending, like that's what they care about is like your asset statement and your bank statement, not necessarily your like
income.
Reported income. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah. Cause it's just a different world. So, all right. So real estate stuff aside, to some extent, I know that you guys do a lot more on the Good podcast, Good Investing, other than just real estate. So, and it's, again, you're a younger person, and be like, well, what is she going to teach? I'm telling you, people, you need, like you said before, education is free. And the people that spend their time learning and putting knowledge into their brain that therefore they can implement and use, being 29 and being in real estate for 9 years, it means you started when you were 20, and you've had tremendous success for what you and your husband have been able to accomplish in such a more short amount of time. And that's drive, that's determination, that's will. I know you just recently had a daughter, is that right?
Yeah.
Yes, little girl. So you start adding family to the puzzle, and things priorities shift a little bit.
Sure.
But you certainly use those years before kids to really get yourself in a great position. And regardless of how old you are, the effort and time that it takes to get yourself in that place is impressive. So my question to you on what you guys do with the podcast is, what other investment strategies, because once you start understanding how real estate works, and once you start understanding how finance works, and once you start putting these pieces together, then you start going, okay, wait a minute, I've got the real estate piece, I've got income coming in from these places, but I don't want to keep all my eggs in one basket. I got to spread stuff out a little bit and try to figure out where to, really, it's for protection, where to balance yourself out, so when things go south, you have a little bit of coverage. So what else are you guys really focused on and putting into your portfolio, as it may be?
Yeah, great question. I think diversity is so key. Obviously, there's a lot of reasons I love multifamily. And I think there's other assets that can also complement that,
Okay.
depending on what your needs are.
Right.
So there's a really cool strategy called infinite banking,
Okay.
which you may or may not know about. It's just like a really awesome way to become your own banker. And
Does this involve insurance policies or something like that?
yes,
Okay.
life insurance policies.
Okay. Yes.
So
okay.
it's
So,
like,
all right, before you start on that. All right. So I see this because I'm on the socials, right? Flipping
Yes.
through stuff. And I see this all the time. Okay. And I see you guys talking about this, but immediately, I'm just being honest with you. Immediately my brain is, okay, all right, we're going to life insurance policy. You can sell yourself. Okay. Right
Yeah.
past it.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm willing to, because I'm operating from a point of ignorance. I literally know nothing about it. I just hear it and I'm like, okay, whatever. That sounds like BS. So explain it to me like I'm a dummy, because I am, so I can understand and then dig into it a little bit, because I do see it all over the place. And sometimes when you see things that frequently, whether or not you think it's valuable or not, or you think it has merit, if there's that many people doing it, gotta have something. So
Yeah, no, it is. And I actually know a lot of people in the multifamily space that are also doing infinite banking, quite a few people. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know all the nuances of it,
that's
but
okay.
that's why I trust experts with that.
I'm a
But
5-year-old, so
okay,
just talk
great.
to me like I'm a 5-year-old.
But yeah, so it's essentially a way to borrow against yourself and then you pay
Okay.
yourself back with interest. So instead of like going to maybe a small bank and getting a loan, whether it's like a personal line of credit or whatever,
Right.
you're able to actually use that, whether it's for your kids' college fund or rehab on your home.
Okay.
And you can actually take out a line of credit against your insurance policy
Okay.
and then pay it back with interest. So you're paying yourself back with interest
Okay.
for money that you borrowed.
Okay.
I mean, it's kind of amazing. It's so complex though. I would definitely not try and do it yourself. I would get with like, I know there's financial advisors do it all the time. So if you have a financial advisor you trust, I talk to them about it
Okay.
because it's super nuanced. And I think there's a lot of due diligence you have to do before you go down a path like that. But it is game changing. It's
Well,
absolutely game changing.
so it sounds like to some extent, and maybe you know this or don't, but the banking system in general, I think it would surprise a lot of folks to understand how exactly this stuff works. In that, if I'm Bank of America and I have, let's say, they have way more than this, but let's say I have $1 million in deposits in my bank. Well, I can then take that $1 million worth of deposits and I can lend out, is it 10x, I think, or something like that? It's like $100 million that you can, or 10 million that you can lend out,
That's insane.
which puts more money into the economy, which is what, when people say we're a debt-based economy, that's really what they're talking about. Because that's why if you decided to if everybody at once decided to pull their money out of Bank of America, you wouldn't be able to get it, because
Correct.
there's
Because it's not sitting in a,
it's not
It's the
sitting there.
same with life insurance. Like when,
Yeah.
actually, it's so funny that we're going on this tangent about life insurance because so many life insurance companies invest in multifamily.
Right.
So many.
Really?
There's like all these private equity firms that have life insurance funds and they all put them in multifamily. And it's hilarious. But the same thing with multifamily, or sorry, same thing with life insurance is that whenever you pay your policy, it's not sitting in an account. They're
Right.
investing it.
Yes, they're
and
putting the
then
money back
they're
in.
making money on your money.
Yes.
So it's fascinating. The same thing with the banks. It's not
Okay.
just sitting
All
there.
right. So I can see this. So you put in a certain amount of money into your policy that you have, and then you have a certain amount that you can access because this policy belongs to you.
Yes, and it grows cash value.
And it grows cash value. And I would imagine there's a lot of tax benefits to this as well, because this is another piece. If I explain a lot of times to people when we're talking about buying properties, and they say, well, I'm going to put down 50% of my money to buy the house. Why are you going to do that? Especially in the house that if you're talking about investment property because you can leverage it for other things, okay, I can see that a little bit. But if you're talking about your house that you're going to live in and it's basically an expense for you, that money is useless to you, because you buy a $400,000 house and you put $200,000 into it. All you're doing is saving your monthly debt expense, and you can't grow your money.
Yes.
And so we talk a lot about how I use billionaires as an example, like a guy like Musk, right? Elon Musk goes and buys Twitter, but he doesn't pay cash for Twitter. First off, he gets money, investors and people to round up or whatever. But what he does, and the reason, if you've seen recently that he's sold a lot of Tesla shares, that's because the value of Twitter dropped. And that's because he had margin calls on what he took out as debt against his Tesla stock, okay, in order to use that money to buy.
Right.
Well, people say, well, debt's terrible. Okay, well, it depends on how you use it. And in this circumstance, the reason it's not a bad thing is because if he were to go sell that Tesla stock to cash it out to then go buy Twitter or put his piece in to buy Twitter, that's a taxable event. And so from when he put that money in there and when he takes it out, that's a taxable event he's going to pay taxes on.
Correct.
But if I go leverage that asset that I have, which is the Tesla stock, and I take out debt and then go buy Twitter or my portion of Twitter, there are no taxable events that have occurred, right? And so I try to put it in that simple terms for that, but can you explain that a little bit better than my little feeble brain as to why using debt isn't as terrible as a lot of people think it is if you use it the right way?
Oh my gosh. I'll tell you right now that Dave Ramsey is probably the person I dislike most on the planet.
Be careful. There's a lot of people that love Dave.
And I know.
They got envelopes and stuff.
His whole life. They're going to come for me.
I know.
But his whole no debt thing, all debt is bad, is such a wash. I mean, you just cannot put a blanket over like such a huge industry as like the lending industry.
Yeah.
Now, here's my feeling on debt and leverage. If the interest on the leverage is lower than your return that you're making off using that leverage, you're printing cash.
Right.
For instance, if your interest on
a house, a rental house,
say a rental house is what?
3%.
3%, but real estate's appreciating 10% a year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's fantastic because you're making 7% on that debt, on that leverage.
But Rachel, Mike just told us that money, that equity that I have in my house is useless and I can't do anything with it.
Not true, because you can also use that asset as collateral, as leverage for a HELOC, to borrow, like your friend did, right, with the land. And the other really great thing, to your point about not putting a bunch down on your house. So say you were to put $100,000 down on a $400,000 house, okay, and it appreciates 10%. So next year it's worth $440,000, right? You have put in $100,000 and you made $40,000.
Right.
That's what is that? I can't do math. A 40%.
40%.
Yeah. What if you only put down 5% instead of, what is that? 25%.
Right.
Well, what would that be? 5%. It'd be 80,000. Would it be? No. $8,000.
Let's see. $400,000. 5% is 5. It's 20.
20,000.
20 grand.
Great. So say you put down 20,000 and you made 40. You just did a 200% return on your cash.
Yes.
See, that is the difference. Real estate's going to appreciate no matter how much you put in there, but the more you put in, the less return you get.
And it's hard when you say real estate's going to appreciate. It's so funny because, again, if you're not in the business and you don't do it on a regular basis, you don't have perspective sometimes on what that means. But they'll say, well, right now, my house isn't worth more than what I paid for it 2 years ago. So, you say real estate's going to appreciate, but it's not. And my answer to that is, well, stretch that out over 10 years and go look back, go Google any value chart you want to find. The St. Louis Fed puts out a ton of those, those charts on a monthly basis about, single family starts, rents appreciation, house appreciation. Go back 50 years and everything is like this all the way up.
Oh, yeah.
Now it goes like that, right? Up and down, but it up and down, all the way up.
Up and to the right.
Correct. Yeah. And it's the Mark Twain, buy real estate and they're not making any more of it.
Yeah.
And I think that appreciation that you pick up gets lost in the shuffle because you're thinking to yourself, because again, people live in the monthly payment land. Okay. What am I having to pay every month to do this? And what I think is so beneficial about what you do, especially with the education on the finance side of things, is that if you really want to grow your nest, right? You want to build your wealth, you want to build up your bank account, you have to think beyond monthly payments. Now you have to do it intelligently. You don't over leverage yourself and put yourself at risk for complete collapse, because people do that as well. But you can start slowly and work in that direction, right?
Correct.
So if you were talking to your 20-year-old self, which seems ridiculous, but if you were, and let's say you had, 20 grand for whatever reason, got a birthday present, mom left it to you, whatever, you've been saving, working hard. Where would you start? Where would you put that money to start with and say, okay, I've got this money, I'm going to put it here to start with, and then I'm going to start building in this direction? Like, where would you put the foundation of your investment career and head in the right?
That is such a great question. No doubt I would put it in real estate.
Okay.
Now, what class?
By the way, I had no idea she was going to answer it that way. So this is
no doubt. No doubt. What other asset has appreciated so consistently historically. I mean, real estate's been around since the beginning of time. Do you know how many data points we have for real estate as opposed to something like crypto? Not that I have anything against crypto. I don't understand it, frankly.
Ooh, we can talk about that. I
Oh
know a lot about
gosh, that
crypto.
is a can of worms. Yeah. This could be a 2-hour long podcast. I
Yes.
love it. But yeah, so there for something with so many data points, right? So it's such a stable investment. But on top of that, what other asset can you claim a loss on while making a gain?
Yep.
It's depreciation. That's it.
Yes.
That's the game changer.
Yeah.
It's the consistency and it's the depreciation. So 100% I'd put that 20K into real estate.
Okay.
Now,
Your own real estate, or like, let's say you didn't own a house. Would you buy a house for yourself, or would you buy an investment property first?
I would buy an investment property first. I'd buy something that cash flowed,
Yep.
Airbnb probably.
Mhm.
And or I would do something like travel nurse housing, because travel nurses get their
It's a
housing
massive
paid,
industry.
massive industry,
Yes.
and they get paid by the hospital for that. So it's just like guaranteed rent. You're not having to chase tenants and all that. And also it's short term. So here's the thing with long-term rentals I don't like. When the market turns and you're ready to sell, you got to wait for that tenant to like
get
their
out.
lease to expire.
Yep.
You want it to be in a flexible situation. So maybe travel nursing, which is usually anywhere between 60 to 90 days, or Airbnb.
So, so I have 2 Airbnbs. My wife and I do, on lakes. We have one in Cedar Creek Lake, and we have one at Lake Whitney.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Well, that's what the show was. The Cedar Creek property is the
Right.
one we did. But we've been looking at some neighborhood stuff, and again, this is why I wanted to have you here, because it didn't dawn on me. I do loans every day, and I talk to people constantly that are in the health industry, because they're actually one of the industries that's doing pretty well. They're making good money. There's a lot of need for it. But there's a ton of travel nurses. Like, it's a massive, it's a big shift just in I would say the last 5 to 10 years. It's been just a massive shift from individuals working directly for hospitals or for clinics or whatever, to they're basically independent contractors that work for themselves, do contracts at 3 and 6 months, but they get paid insane amounts of money for what they do.
And they get rental stipends.
Yes, which is great. But the beauty of that is, on the rental side, is anytime you have an institution that is paying the rent, that's what you want.
Yeah, totally.
Right? So, same friend of mine, which I didn't realize this was a thing too, but Section 8 housing. All right. Regardless of what you think about it. I did not know that you can basically identify almost any property as Section 8 housing. And there are limitations, HOAs and things of that nature, that will put constraints on that. But if you go out into rural America and you find somebody that can be a renter, there's management pieces to it. So I don't want to make this sound like this is a wonderful thing. I'm just saying this is a process. But the government pays 80% of that rent. And it's incumbent on the person living there to pay their 20%. If they don't, then within usually less than 60 days, they're out. And again, process to that, there's a lot involved, not making it sound easy. But you have a guarantee every month on the same day that you're going to get a check for 80% of your rent, no matter what.
Right.
And just that peace of mind alone, whether it's a company like a staffing company that's paying it, or it's the government that's paying it.
Yep.
Anytime there's an entity paying your rent every month, which is why commercial property is so great, because it's usually businesses that are paying, and these things are automated, and you're not waiting on like a single family residence where you've got the mom just lost her job and dad's hurt, and they've got 3 kids, and like, hey, look, I'm not saying that, good, bad, what, I'm just saying that these are the things that occur.
It's a headache.
Yes, it's another thing you have to deal with. And when you can factor out a headache like that, when you're getting guaranteed money every single month,
it makes sense.
You can't replace that.
I also really like, speaking of different type of asset classes for real estate, is triple net properties.
Okay.
So those are like properties in like retail centers. So
Yep.
think like AutoZone, CVS,
Yep.
Planet Fitness.
I owned a restaurant for about 7 years, and we had a lease, and triple net.
Triple net. So quickly for the listeners, triple net just means that the landlord is not responsible for taxes, insurance, or maintenance.
Yep.
That's the triple and the triple net.
Mhm.
So it's a fantastic, property to invest in, because you're not responsible for any of that stuff. There's really no variable expense.
Yes.
And whenever you buy like a Dollar General or a Dollar Tree or something like that, if that, say Dollar Tree in Waxahachie, can't make their monthly rent, Dollar Tree corporate
Takes care of it.
steps in and pays. So it's guaranteed rent payments.
Yeah.
So it's a really good, it doesn't appreciate, I think, in the same way, but it's a really good cash flow.
Yes.
So those can be cash cows. I'm actually invested in a fund. It's a triple net fund. So this syndicator, I'm just a passive investor in it, but he's buying up a bunch of different of these triple net retail stores, putting them into a fund, and then that fund will become a REIT. It'll go public. And so
wow.
that's like the big multiplier is whenever it goes public.
When you have all that money flowing in from the public.
Oh my gosh, huge.
Yeah.
So right now it's private, and we've invested in it, and we're so excited about it. But
well, and the beauty of that too is like, because you're involved in a lot of things, and that's great, even if it's just passive to some extent, because, and this is, maybe we'll get into crypto in a minute, but when I have been doing crypto for a little while for a number of different reasons. I'm not I'm not a, what do you call it, a fanatic about it necessarily. I feel like I'm a reasonable human when
You're
it comes to it.
Not a crypto bro?
No. But I also, the reason I did it, the reason I got into it was because I saw that there was a technology and an opportunity for something that would have great benefit in a lot of other parts of our society, not just in some coin that somebody created, but the technology behind it, the blockchain.
Wire transfers
Yes.
would be 700 times easier.
Exactly.
With the blockchain. Yeah.
So that piece of it, what it made me do is I wanted to put a little bit of money, because I believe that if you want to learn something, put something on the line, because you will learn it much, much quicker. Not a lot. I'm not saying, go out and drop, $100,000. And I'm saying, even with the crypto stuff, it was like $100, $200, $300, just to see, because then what happens is your attention shifts, because now you're not forcing yourself. You're just, now I have money in there. So it's like people that are gamblers. Like if you like to gamble on the NFL, if you like to bet on NFL games, you're reading every article, you're looking at every, person's opinion on what's coming up with the game, all that kind of stuff. It's the same thing. So if you get into multifamily, if you get into, the triple nets, if you get into that stuff, even if it's just dipping your toe in there and not being full forged, you will learn so much because you're just in it and you see it every day.
You have a little bit of skin in the game.
Yes. And I think that that's so important whenever you want to start looking at doing different investment styles is, figuring out the cheapest way you can get in. So that way you can start the education process, because then you can grow it from there. The person that wants to show up one day and say, okay, I've got 100,000, I'm gonna put it all, it's like, learn about the space first, because you're going to make a lot more mistakes than you are going to get the right things done. And if the pain isn't as bad, right, because you don't lose as much when it does happen, then you can continue to grow that area. So is that something that you guys did intentionally, where you're like, well, I'm going to try this out, I want to try this, or did it just bleed into other things as you went along?
Oh gosh. I did the exact opposite, actually, which I don't recommend. I cashed out everything.
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's risky. That's all I'm saying.
I had a lot of money in Tesla stocks back before, like in 2018.
Okay.
I did actually cash it all out to put it into multifamily.
Okay.
So I'm not in the stock market.
Okay.
I mean,
at all, you have nothing?
I have zero.
No index funds, no 401k?
No mutual funds, no 401k. I mean, I'm self-employed. I've never had a 401k, but I don't even have a solar.
Or IRA, whatever.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm all cash and all in real estate.
Okay.
I'm all in.
Okay.
So, but I think, to your point, it's so important to educate yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's but you can also get into a pattern where you are only consuming and you're not actually doing anything with the information.
Right.
So I think it's an interesting balance. It's like, educate yourself till you're comfortable, but at a certain point, you're going to have to take a risk.
Yeah.
You're going to have to do it in order to move that needle.
Right.
Because you're right, $100, $200, that's going to, but it's going to make you focus on that asset.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, it's not going to move the needle. It's not going to change your life.
No.
So it is important, once people do get educated, that they take action, and I don't know who said the quote, but I love it. It's, don't wait to buy real estate and wait.
Right. Yes. I've actually seen that. A couple places.
It's a popular one.
Yeah,
I don't know who said it. I want to say Winston Churchill, but I don't know. Yeah, probably.
Well, okay. So, we're headed into unknown waters on what's going to happen next year for 2023. Everybody's got their guesses on what's going to occur, but nobody really knows. We'll just see. But if things do go downward, that usually creates opportunity, right? And whenever everybody else is selling, as Warren Buffett would say, you need to be buying. And when everybody else is buying, you need to be selling. Well, everybody else was buying in 2021, and a lot of people didn't sell, and now they're having to sell because they're where they are. What would you say, or how does someone prepare themselves, to stay in just your average somebody that's not looking to become a real estate investor necessarily, but I've seen you mention things like your freedom and your magic number and these things where you're trying to get yourself to a place where you can feel secure, because at the end of the day, I think that's what most people just want. They just want to feel secure.
Mm-hmm.
They want to feel like I have enough to where if a tragedy occurs in my life or something changes dramatically, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
Right. So I have another term that I like to use from time to time that I got from somebody that's it's called FU money. I won't say it fully, but I'm not talking about FU money. FU money is you can do whatever the hell you want and
Yeah.
piss off anybody that you want
law.
and you're fine. Okay. Because you got enough to sustain it. I'm talking about, just the average person that just wants to take care of their family and feel secure. Tell me about your freedom and your magic numbers to where, what are the steps and what are they first off? And then how do we get to that point?
Yeah. I think, you watch Shark Tank?
I have. I don't
Okay.
watch it on a regular basis.
So in Shark Tank, Mark Cuban always says whenever people come into the tank and they ask him a question and they're like, what's your customer acquisition cost? What's your net revenue? What's your gross? All this kind of stuff. And if people are like, they're like, you need to know your numbers.
Yes.
You cannot operate as a business unless you know your numbers. And I think even if you don't run your own business, even if you're just an employee,
your household is a business, your home is a business.
You are a business.
Yes.
You're making income and you're spending money.
Yep.
That's a business.
Yep.
There's income coming in and there's expenses going out. I'm sorry, you're a business.
Yep.
Yeah. So you need to know your numbers. And we have this tool, quick plug on goodgoodinvesting.com. We have this tool called You May Be Richer Than You Think.
Okay.
It's a net worth assessment. And I think
I like the title of that, by the way.
Yeah.
It makes people like, oh, really?
Yeah. Well, I mean, but it is like,
yeah.
There's so many people where I'm like,
you didn't want to call it, you don't have enough you don't have enough. You don't want to give it that name. It's a negative name. You may be richer than you think you are.
than you think. And I think people surprise themselves because they don't know, like you were saying with the leverage, they don't know where they can find money.
Yes.
You can find money in your house.
Yep.
You can find money in retirement funds. You can find money in your life insurance policy. I think people they think the only money they have is what they're paid by their employer.
Right.
And that's not true.
Right.
And so I think knowing your numbers, what is your net worth really?
Right.
And so it's a super simple tool, but it goes into finding your freedom and your magic numbers. So once you've identified what your net worth is, you have your net worth and then you have your investable net worth, right? Like what's liquid, what can you use to
access?
Invest?
Yeah.
Right. And in multifamily, we do accept retirement funds. So that would be an investable part of your net worth.
Okay.
And then there's also this tool on the second page of the net worth assessment, and it's identifying your freedom number and your magic number. Now, this is really what's going to be the blueprint for your investing journey. Your freedom number is how much you need to make every year in order to retire.
Okay.
So I'm not talking just pay the bills. I'm talking keep your lifestyle.
Right.
What are you spending on travel, on food, on incidentals, on your emergency fund, all of it, and it's itemized. You can insert in all that information to find your freedom number. I call it the freedom number because once you've achieved it, you don't have to answer to anyone.
Right.
You can quit your job. You can open an Etsy shop, whatever. And then how you find your magic number. The magic number is how much money you need invested in order to passively make your freedom number every year.
Right. So how much money do you need to have somewhere where you got cash flow coming back passively, so it's enough that
That's financial freedom.
Right.
When your passive income offsets your active income, you've made it.
Because now you're not trading your time for money.
Exactly. You can literally do whatever you want with your life and you're still making the same income. So find your freedom number. That's going to be how much passive income you need per year in order to quit your job. And then your magic number. And we have formulas. It's we spend a lot of time on this assessment. And so there's formulas in there. You can just plug and play. It's so fun and easy. But just for the sake of anyone that's sitting watching this with their phone in their hand, Say you wanted to make $120,000 a year in passive income, and then you can quit your job. Well, in multifamily, at least, we have an average cash on cash element to our deals. So we pay our investors on average, it depends on the deal, but around 8%
Okay.
per year. And that's just in passive income, right?
Right.
So if you were to use that as your appreciation, whatever, so you're making 8% a year in passive income, but you need to get $120,000 per year. With our formula, what you do is you make that 8% a percentage or a decimal, so 0.08. You take your freedom number, $120,000, divide it by 8%, and that equals 1.5 million. So I would need $1.5 million invested in this specific
Whatever.
multifamily asset or whatever it
Yep.
is. That's giving me 8% a year, and I will be able to retire.
And then
So it just like lays it out there, because you
Yeah.
can say, yeah, I want to retire, I want to invest, but like unless you know your numbers,
Yeah.
you're blind, you're walking blind.
What do you think? What holds people back from doing this? Like, what is it? If I'm, me and my husband or me and my wife, whatever, are working and we're living paycheck to paycheck, basically, kind of barely making it. And if I sit down and do this assessment, I'm just going to be depressed, right? Because I don't have anything or I don't have enough, or whatever. What would you tell somebody like to get past that psychological part of it to where, because I think it's like going to the dark. Part of the reason as a lender, whenever agents refer people to us, and we're like, when I have new agents come in, I always tell them, like, go show them a house, like just show them one, go look at a house, go check one out before you make them go get pre-approved. Now, if you're showing 50 houses a day and you don't have time for it, fine. Then get a buyer's agent, have them go show a house. But either way, the point of it is if they go see a house and they feel comfortable, they get the appetite, right? I love this place, I want to try to do something. Then they're going to be more willing to speak to me, because talking to me, whether your financial situation is great or not, it's just not something anybody wants to do all the time, right? Because
Right.
you're you're stripping down financially naked in front of somebody that you never met before. And
Yeah.
if you're
It's vulnerable.
yeah, and people say, well, I just got divorced and that's why I'm like, look, you don't have to explain anything to me. Like, you don't need to justify it. I see this stuff all the time. Like, it's just life. Life happens. Things happen. It's okay. But what would you say to somebody who's like, man, this all sounds great, I really want to do this, but I know it's going to be bad, and I don't even want to go down that road because I'm just going to be sad and depressed, and I'm not going to be able to do anything.
I think that, it's kind of the same thing with not wanting to open your online banking app because you
Right.
don't want to see what's in there,
Yeah.
but it doesn't make it any less real.
Right.
And I think at a certain point, if you want to see change, you're going to have to face the music, even if it's painful. And that's why, a big reason of these people that are like paycheck to paycheck. And of course, you need to invest smart, always keep an emergency fund.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't know that they have money in assets that aren't just their disposable income,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that person that's paycheck to paycheck, maybe they're sitting on 200 grand in a HELOC on their house, or maybe they have a 401k that's worth 150. It's like it's just making whatever 7% in the mutual funds that
Or
it's
maybe they
invested
have
in.
$600 or $700 worth of expenses every month, that if they just looked at what they were paying out, if you look at your bank statement, if you look at your debit card and what you're charging every single month.
Subscriptions they forgot about.
Yes.
That happens to me all the time.
Well, there's an industry now. There is literally an industry that is built up with software and different things that examines your accounts and tells you all the stuff that you're paying for on a regular basis that you may or may not even realize that you're doing.
Yeah.
Because everybody wants a monthly subscription. Everything that you do is a monthly subscription these days. And just going through and seeing all of your expenses and going, and this is everybody. This isn't just people living. This is anybody, because especially it gets worse. The little bit, more success you have, a little more income you have coming in, you tend to just, oh yeah, let's do that. And then you go back and look, 6 months or 8 months later, and you're like, I spent how much on this? And we've never used it one time. What's Hulu? I don't watch Hulu. What is this?
I know.
But that stuff happens. And if you don't pull the curtain back and if you don't look under the hood, then you're not going to see these things.
And it is scary and it is vulnerable and it is hard.
Yeah.
It is hard, but you have to do it. If you really want to make change, you have to do it. And then you also have to assess your own goals. What do
Yeah.
you want? Do you need cash flow? Are you retired? Are you more interested in something that appreciates because you have a great job and you don't really need to see that for another 5 years or so? So I think also like analyzing not only your financial goals, but also like your lifestyle goals. Like,
Mhm.
what's the life that you want? Because
Right.
there's going to be an asset to invest in that's going to, be able to service that well. What is it? That's up for you to determine, but that's why education is so key.
Yeah.
Once you know the buffet of options available to you, oh my gosh, there's so much more I can do outside of the stock market. I can get creative within my investing journey.
Yeah, and I don't think I think people get wrapped up in their day-to-day life, and they wake up, they take the kids to school, they go to their job, they have lunch, they come home, they feed their kids dinner, they go to football, baseball practice, whatever, and then it's 9:30 and you're like, I'm just tired. I don't want to mess with anything. I'm going to watch Game of Thrones and I'm going to go to sleep.
Yeah.
And on the weekends they're going to a tournament or they're visiting the family or they're hanging out with some friends from time to time. And I found this, I'm saying this because this is something that I experienced and kind of came to revelations over the last couple of years. It was, I spent all this time just doing stuff constantly. I was constantly doing stuff that I never stopped to sit down and think and just
Yeah.
think about a thing, whatever that thing is. Like I'm trying to, get my finances together, or I'm trying to look and see what I have currently and where I need to go. And taking some time to yourself, an hour, 2 hours, whatever it may be, once a week, whenever you can find it, is so critical, because you have to self-examine these things and you have to sit down and go through everything, but that takes time.
Yeah.
And we have this, I don't think people necessarily don't want to do it. I think that, and I struggle from this and even work and all kinds of stuff of, I'm doing something, but the whole time I'm sitting here, the whole time we're sitting here talking, I've got 3 or 4 other things in the back of my head that I need to be doing that I'm not doing. And so
Right.
there's almost like this guilt of, well, I'm doing this thing, but I should be doing these other things.
Sure.
But it wouldn't change if I was doing one of those other 3 things, and I'd be thinking about this or something else that I need to be doing. And it's just this mechanism that happens in your brain, especially if you're haven't given up, like if you're just trying, like I'm trying to do everything I can. But I think because we don't slow down and go, okay, I need some time to think, I need to examine, I need to look at all this kind of stuff. You look up and it's 10 years and you're like, oh shit, like
Yeah.
where'd all my time go? I had all this time, I had all these plans and I never did it, but that's because you didn't stop and slow down for a second and just to examine what you're doing. When I was about, I don't know, 35, probably something like that, I was a huge sports fan. Baseball, football, basketball. I was Mavs, Rangers, Cowboys, listening to sports talk radio 24/7. Like I was obsessed, only because that was just where the world I'd come out of. I played high school and was big, big fan of everything, and was involved in it, and I got my kids into it and all that. So I was into it. But then one day, and I don't remember what it was, I just kind of was like, what is all this knowledge getting me? Like, where am I really headed with this kind of stuff? Yeah, I can sit at the bar with my buddies and we can shoot the shit about, the running back situation for the Cowboys, or if they're going to sign a new pitcher, or for the Rangers or whatever. But is there a real benefit to me? Like, am I getting anything from this personally, for my family, for my life, other than just pure entertainment? The answer was no. Like it wasn't. And it's not I'm not trying to knock anybody that's, we all have our hobbies and things that we like to do, but I made a shift in my head to say, okay, I'm going to start focusing my hobbies, or the things that I'm interested in, on things that are going to benefit me. Right. So if you go through my TikTok, or if you had access to my phone and you could go through my TikTok page or my Instagram or whatever, YouTube, it's all crypto, taxes, entrepreneurship, motivation. Like it's all this stuff, because, we demonize social media a lot. But you create the world that you live in that place. And so I made a conscious effort to say, if I'm going to dumb my brain down by sitting here for an hour every day to have a release, I'm at least going to make this information something that I can use and retain for other things.
Oh yeah,
You know?
totally.
So how have you guys, with your business and everything else, what are y'all doing? Speaking of social media, what are y'all doing to, really try to grow your client base for what you're trying to do for the real estate side? Are you using that to promote the multifamily investing as well? Is that part of the reason the podcast came about? Like, what are your strategies that you're using to kind of grow that?
I do kind of keep both worlds pretty separate. I do have crossover, right? So there's people that have invested with us on the multifamily side that have gone and bought residential with us and vice versa. But I do like on socials and everything, keep them pretty separate.
Okay.
I mean, that's just because, in the residential side, I'm servicing people in North Texas.
Okay.
On the multifamily side, I'm working with people across the world.
Gotcha.
So it's just kind of just a different base, right?
Gotcha.
There is a Venn diagram of
Sure.
crossover, but it's
but
small. It's small. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of like I said earlier, we are just like you said, those TikToks that you're watching that are easy to understand, quick consumables. You're getting info, you're getting value, you're getting your mind blown second after second. You're getting that dopamine rush.
Yeah. That's
Like
the downside of it.
we tried to recreate that.
Yeah.
So, we stuff that blows my mind. I simplify it and record a video and post it, and you don't have to do all these crazy edits or anything.
Yes.
But I love sharing information. I love just for free, even if someone wants to use another realtor, even if they have no interest in ever investing in multifamily, I still want to teach them stuff that I didn't know.
Right.
And actually, I went to a Tony Robbins event, and he said something that blew my mind. He said, stop endeavoring to give your kids what you never had, but rather endeavor to teach them what you never knew.
Oh, yeah. That's great.
And it's so good.
I love that.
Because when you teach someone something, they can then go, pass
Teach
it
them to
forward.
fish.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Instead of just giving them $100 or
Yep.
whatever. It's like, here's how you can make $100, or here's how you can take $100 and make it $10,000
Yeah.
or whatever, So education is just huge for us. I just love it. I don't,
Well, you said you went to, you mentioned Tony Robbins, you mentioned you met your podcast buddy at a multifamily event. So,
yeah.
So you're obviously yourself going to trainings and seminars. Conrad, this is number one contributor to the show, is officially checked in. This is Conrad's the guy I was telling you about that had the land that he leveraged. And
oh, awesome.
yes, yeah. So he's always involved.
Oh,
but
missed that.
Yes,
watch it back.
But so you're going to all these events and you're participating in this stuff yourself, which is an indication of how much you value the education piece.
Yeah.
So what would
networking?
Yeah. Well, what would you say to somebody? It's because this happens in real estate all the time, where they're like, they have a Tom Ferry event, or they have a Brian Buffini, or whatever these things are, where they do real estate training. And I'll hear agents say, well, I'm not going to go to that. I've been there before. Or I saw that, or he says the same thing as this guy, and I've already learned that. What would you tell somebody that gave you that reason as to why they wouldn't continually go to these trainings and education seminars and learn stuff?
Well, I think, okay, you can learn stuff for free on the internet. Mm-hmm. And sometimes these events do have a cover charge, right?
Of course, yes.
I don't really go to them for education.
Okay.
I go to them to shake hands.
Really?
Because you cannot do that online.
Right.
You cannot do that on social media. You cannot make a meaningful connection with someone over the internet, in my opinion.
Right.
Going to these events and showing up in person, that's how I created one of the most profitable partnerships in my life with my business partner, Andrea.
Okay.
That's how I, that's how I find sponsors to invest with. Mm-hmm. That's how I learn to trust people. I mean, partnerships will take you to the stratosphere, and you cannot find them. You cannot make them unless you're putting yourself out there, meeting people in person and shaking hands. COVID was rough. We're past it.
Yeah.
Get yourself out there, go to events, meet people. Yeah. Hopefully you learn some things, but honestly, I spend a lot of time in the hallways outside of the conference area, just talking with people that are there attending.
Because you're there with like-minded people that think the same way that you do.
And then they're the ones that are telling me like, oh yeah, you're in multifamily. Have you tried infinite banking? And I'm like, let's go. Okay, so let's skip this talk about whatever depressing recession. Let's go get a coffee and talk about how you've, and people are just so open and willing to share information. And Andrea and I actually started our own meetup, which is free, but it's called the Passive Investors Network. And it's here in North Texas.
Okay.
So we meet in like Plano usually. Because for the same reason, to network with other passive investors or, other active real estate investors. Yeah.
I didn't even really think about it in terms of that, just the amount of people that you meet, because that's the other thing is you have mentioned this on this thing many times about, you are an amalgamation of the 5 people you spend the most amount of time with.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not telling people that they don't need to have their friends and don't need to do, spend time with their buddy from high school. But what I am saying is if your goal is to continue to drive yourself forward and continue to, build whatever version of success you want to call it. Doesn't necessarily have to be money. You've got to put yourself around people that think the same way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Because the more you're exposed to it and the more you're in front of it on a day-to-day basis, the more likely those things are going to come to fruition for
People
you.
that think the same way, but also might know more.
Right.
And so they can kind of blow your mind.
You don't want to be the smartest person in the room.
Never.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's not going to work out in your favor if you are. All right. Well, man, we're already an hour and 10 minutes into this, but
are you kidding?
Nope.
You were serious. It did fly by.
I told you it goes quick.
It did fly by.
All right, real quick though, I want to ask you about the horses. All right, because I see you on the horses. I've seen your Facebook page. Where did all that start?
Oh, back when I was an itty bitty baby.
What did you do?
My grandparents started me in lessons when I was like 5 years old. And then they bought me a horse that was actually pregnant. And then she gave birth, and that horse was like, it was on their farm. They lived in Shiner, Texas. And that horse was like my love. Her name was Cinnamon. She was so sweet. And so I kind of just got the bug way back then. I don't know why. My family is not into horses. None of my siblings are into horses. And then I started traveling for modeling when I was like 17. I leased a horse when I was living in LA, but it wasn't
people like, you can lease horses.
Yeah, I actually have my horse leased right now.
Yeah. I saw that too.
But yeah, so anyway, and then when I moved back to Texas, I was like, you know what? I'm in Texas. There's tons of land. Horses are not that expensive. And so I bought a horse, and I keep him on a farm in Pilot Point. And I do have him leased right now. It's a co-lease, so I can still go ride him.
Yeah.
We like split the cost because I just don't have time, and I just want him to be ridden. Yeah. But it's amazing. And so we actually travel the country. My stepmom has 2 horses. So we travel the country.
Y'all show?
Oh gosh, no. We just do Western pleasure, so trail riding.
Yeah.
And so we went to Bryce Canyon last year, and we went to Oklahoma a few weeks ago, and then 2 years ago we went to Arkansas. We want to go to Wyoming, and we just like trailer with them and ride
trails around all over there. Yeah, so my family is from Illinois, and they moved here when I was really young. My grandparents and everybody. And my grandmother got into horses at a very young age. My great grandmother bought her a pony when she was little, and then they ended up having a farm in Illinois, and my mom and her sisters were raised there, and shoveling horse manure and cleaning stalls and stuff in the in the 50s and 60s. So then they moved here, and so my whole family is knee deep in horses, and I'm not as big in it these days as I was. And I wasn't, it's funny, I wasn't into it as in the sense like I was excited to do it necessarily. It was just around me all the time. Like I just grew up around it. I have an aunt that I think she's slowed down a little bit, but my cousins do. They do cutting. My grandmother was in dressage. My mom and my sister have a horse that they invested in and won some national thing. I don't even pay attention sometimes, but
that is crazy.
Yes. But what I found though is that I've ridden a couple times in the last couple of years in multiple situations, and I really miss it. Like I enjoyed it a ton. And what's crazy is and I'm sure everybody has this, but my wife and we watch Yellowstone, like everybody else. Although I think this season's terrible.
Ooh, controversial.
Yes, I do. This season of Yellowstone is awful. If I have to see one more scene with Rip and Beth, pining over each other, I'm gonna jump out of bridge.
Yeah, it's old news.
Yes, but anyway, but watching that and seeing them out, cutting the cattle and doing their thing, like, man, I really want to go. I want to go to Montana and ride a horse for like a day and go sleep on the ground.
Come to Pilot Point and ride a horse.
Yes, I may have to. Well, I mean, the truth is I can go up street 5 minutes from where my mom lives. I can go ride anytime I want. I just never do with the kids and everything. But what I don't, people that don't get into horses miss sometimes is it really is an obsession.
Oh yeah.
And it's crazy because everybody that I've ever met that's into horses, they're either, there's no middle ground. You're either all the way in and you love them and you're doing everything you can to get on them as much as possible, whatever that means, or you have no interest whatsoever. Like there's not very many people that are just like, oh no,
lukewarm.
Yeah.
They're fine.
No, and it's like a pet. It's like your dog. I mean, they have personality. They're like incredibly smart. Yes. They're temperamental. They have their moments. Like it definitely it's a great hobby, and you get a good exercise too. I don't think people realize when you ride the leg exercise that you get sitting on a horse all day long and how sore you are if you've been riding for like 3.5 hours or whatever.
Oh, 100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, for sure. Yeah. And I've, yeah, that's so funny. It's like 99% of my personality now is horse girl. So
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
I very much resonate with that.
Yes. No, I think it's great. I love it. And it's a lot of fun to do that. Especially if you've never done it before. One of the times we went to Hawaii and I took my kids and my wife, we went out riding and they were all like pissed off about it because they didn't want to, what, I'm gonna ride a horse for 3.5 hours. And then we went out there and it even rained on us, which
Oh my
was,
gosh.
yeah, it was brief. I mean, I say it was in and out, but we got wet.
That's not fun.
But when they were done, they loved it. They were like, that was a blast. Like, it was so much fun. I'm like, I told you, like, if you guys would just listen to me, I'm going to show you what's fun. But if you've never done it before, I would certainly recommend giving it a shot because it is a lot of fun. If you're not into outdoors and dust and, if you sneeze a lot, maybe not the best idea. But before we go, I do want to know, because you brought it up a couple times, do you want to know, or what are your thoughts on crypto?
Oh my, I am not opposed to crypto.
Okay.
I don't understand it.
Okay.
And that's probably on me because like you said, there's a lot of education out there. I
Sure.
need to take my own medicine. But I will say that some of my friends have lost a lot of money
Yes.
in the past 6 months in crypto.
They have yes, a lot of people have.
And
Most people have that have been in.
this
I have.
is so with crypto, and I don't understand it, granted. I think there are a lot of awesome benefits to it. I heard about someone trying to buy a house with Bitcoin.
Mhm.
Like, I think you're definitely going to start seeing more of that, which is
Yes. There's
mind-blowing.
lenders now that will, it's the same. The principles are the same. They'll
Yeah.
leverage your Bitcoin or whatever. You give it, you basically put it in their account, you hold it as yours, but
Yeah.
they will leverage that for the purchase of the house.
Yeah, it's like mad. So I think it is the future. I don't quite understand it, so I'm not going to poo-poo on it because I think there's a lot of people that have poo-pooed on a lot of things, and then they were like ate their words because it was like it was the future.
Right.
Electric cars, for instance, full circle. But I don't understand it, and I don't think because it hasn't been around a long time and there's not a lot of data points to show what the trajectory has been or will be.
Do you know how long it's been around?
Well, what, like 20 years?
Okay, yeah. I mean, just about, and a
Yeah.
little less than that.
Yeah.
Since 2008, Bitcoin was the very first one, right after the
Right.
crash that happened in 2008. So just about 15
Right,
years.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, I'm just comparing it to real estate, which is
Yeah,
like
yeah.
thousands.
No,
But
absolutely.
and I'm not like saying one is better.
No.
It's just different.
I'm not saying it's good or bad either. I'm just curious. Like, when you say you don't, like, is there one thing in particular that you could say, I don't get this? Like, what do you think that is?
With crypto, I don't get NFTs.
Okay.
Is that crypto?
Yeah.
I guess I don't get if that's the same thing.
So let me back up. So I hate the term crypto. Okay. And the reason I don't like it is not because it's not necessarily accurate. It's just that it has a negative connotation. Okay. Because when you think cryptocurrency, you're like fake money. Everybody just says, well, it's just fake money. Right.
And also, it sounds like the word cryptic, which
Right.
is not a good word.
It's a Ponzi scheme, which, look, anytime you deal with money of any kind, there's going to be room for fuckery. Okay.
Yeah.
That's just what it is. All right. There's going to be problems that come up whenever you're dealing about money. And that involves any aspect, real estate, banking, stocks, crypto, whatever. There's going to be people that are going to take advantage of other people and do bad things. And especially right now, crypto is so unregulated and there's nobody paying attention to what the bad guys are doing, that there's a lot more room for that kind of stuff. Okay. Anytime you have an emerging market, something that's new, it's going to be a problem. Right. So I don't like crypto. I don't like that word because really when I look at it, when I first learned about it, I look at the cryptocurrency market as a stock market, not as a currency market, because it's really not currency. Some things are, right? Bitcoin, if you want to call it a currency, you can. If you want to call it an asset, you can. The only reason that Bitcoin has grown to the degree that it has is because it was one of the first ones that got in. And what's unique about it is that it is because it's decentralized and because the person that created it, nobody knows who they are. And it wasn't that individual, whoever that was, still has a wallet with an insane amount of Bitcoin in it, has not moved it, has not sold it, has not done anything with it in that period of time. there isn't a single entity that is making money off others because of that. So like the FTX thing, the reason that was a big deal was because it was an exchange. It was a place where people would buy and sell their cryptocurrencies just like you would with the NASDAQ or you would with the S&P 500 or whatever,
Right.
right? You're the New York Stock Exchange. So you're changing money there, but you're also holding money there.
Right.
So I like my exchange I use is Coinbase. So I have money that I have sitting in there with different cryptos. Well,
Yeah.
if Coinbase goes bankrupt tomorrow because there's no regulation and no banking restrictions there, all that money goes away. Okay, so it's very risky. So when things go sideways, it typically occurs with the things, the third parties related to it.
Sure.
Okay, so so with crypto in general, like everything is based off of transparency and decentralization. Okay.
Yeah.
So the reason Bitcoin is has grown is because you have greater amount of users. You have people coming into the space using it and holding it. So the more users you have, the more decentralized it becomes, because the way that the blockchain works is it's held on multiple servers. Okay. Multiple. That's what mining is essentially to some extent. But this is held on, you know, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people's basically servers that manage this. And whenever a transaction occurs, it's recorded on the blockchain, which anybody can access. If you want to go onto the Bitcoin blockchain right now and see who's trading and moving stuff, you can absolutely see it. You don't know who they are because it's a wallet. It's a hash number that's very long, but you can see the same wallet. This wallet's moved stuff. That's why there are literally accounts on Twitter that are called like whale accounts. So they'll say, hey, somebody just removed, you know, $2 billion worth of Bitcoin from this exchange, you know, just so everybody knows. So it's very, very transparent. I can't go into Bank of America's books and see what they're doing.
No, of course not. Yeah.
Right. So, so that's part of the appeal, is because there is, you know, there's this idea that it's this like underground, and this all comes from Silk Road, which is a whole other thing from years ago. Yeah. So, but what the people of Silk Road didn't realize is that your wallet is still tied to an IP address and they can still find you. So it's actually way more transparent than even cash. So if I want to pay you in cash, nobody can trail that at all.
Right.
But if I want to pay you in Bitcoin, if you dig hard enough, you can figure out who I am and where it came from.
Sure.
So the appeal of the transparency is very, very, you know, people find very attractive. And then the decentralization, meaning not one person can swing things, you know, massively. Right. So that's where the appeal comes from. The NFT piece of it is NFTs are non-fungible tokens, which are essentially what I would call a one of one. Okay. So you modeled, right? So if Calvin Klein creates a sweater, okay, and they sell it, and let's say it's a limited edition sweater, they're selling 50 of those sweaters and that's it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that is a physical NFT because there's only 50 of those.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you cannot duplicate them. I mean, you know, there's knockoffs and all kinds of stuff like that. But at the end of the day, if you could prove that this was the original one that Calvin Klein created, the value of that is immensely great. Right. I mean, if you value that, I may not value that, but you may. So it all depends on your taste.
Sure.
So what an NFT is it takes that concept and makes it digital. Okay.
Yeah.
So now I can, and the easiest way to understand it is art, because that's where it's being used the most right now, is if I'm an artist and I want to create a piece of digital art, okay, whatever that be, the Bored Ape Yacht Club guys and, you know, Beeple and all these people. I'm now creating this piece of art and I'm recording it on the blockchain. Okay. And then I'm going to sell that to you and it moves from my wallet to your wallet. So now that transaction for that item is recorded on your wallet and it's yours and you own it and nobody else does. Okay. Now, can you take a picture of it and share it with somebody else and do whatever? Yes. They can have it on their phone, but they don't own it. Okay. Right. They have an image of it, just like I can go to the Louvre and I can take a picture of the Mona Lisa, but I don't own the Mona Lisa. Right.
That's actually explained really well.
Right.
Yeah.
So where the value for that is when you look at future use cases. Okay. So let's start with, I know you have young kids, but I have a 13-year-old son, a 15-year-old daughter. Are you familiar with Fortnite? Do you know what Fortnite is?
I know what Fortnite is.
Do you know what Roblox
Yes.
is? Okay. And Minecraft?
Yes.
Okay. So those three games are littered with what I would call NFTs. Okay. They're different. They're not recorded the same or whatever, but Fortnite's a great example. My son started getting into Fortnite when he was like 7 years old. Got into it, playing the game all the time. He started spending money. I'm like, what are you buying? Like, and I asked him, like, are you buying new guns? Are you buying, something that's going to make you progress and get better at the game? Like, are you spending money on that? And he's like, no, it's a dance move, or it's a skin. Skin's like an outfit.
Yeah.
It's all these. And I'm like, well, I don't understand. Like, why would you want to spend money on that? Well, they do because other people have them. It's like style, and it's like, taste and what you're into. Well, I want to dress up like a munchkin today, or I want to look like Captain America, or I want to wear whatever. Well, if I don't own that skin, then I can't use it. And I really like that. So I'm going to buy it. I'm going to spend $2. I'm going to spend $1 on it because now I own it and now I can use it.
Sure.
Right. So imagine, not that this is happening to the metaverse and things, when you start moving in more digital spaces of, if I want to create one day and say, I have my digital house that you're my mother and you live in California and I live in Texas, but we want to spend time together. So we put on our little VR headsets and we go to my house, and now I have a couch and I have a TV and I have all these things. Like, that's where you could see things going.
Yeah.
The better use case for it on NFTs is, let's say, like one of my favorite bands is the Foo Fighters. I went to Lollapalooza in Chicago a couple of years ago, and it was right before their drummer passed away. And it was one of the last concerts that he did. Well, I have a pass and I have tickets to Lollapalooza. Okay. Well, let's fast forward 30 years. That ticket that I had to Lollapalooza, if you're a big Foo Fighters fan and you're a collector and you do all that, that's probably going to have some value. Okay. How much value depends, many factors. But what they're doing now is they're doing ticketing for NFTs. So now my ticket to this event, my access to this event is an NFT, and I own this. And not only does it give me the collectible piece of it, but it also gives me access to other things. So now the VIP lounge that I'm going into, because I purchased this NFT, I have access to it. So if I was a group like Lollapalooza and I'm creating a certain culture around my concert experience. Okay. Well, if someone had an NFT from the, 1994 Lollapalooza and I bought it from them, and because I have that special NFT that I purchased from this person and paid, now I have access to all these other events and all these other things that I didn't before, because the ownership of that thing transferred from that person to me, and I can't counterfeit it. There's no way to counterfeit it.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Okay.
I love that.
So it's the security, the transparency, and the decentralization of it.
Actually, it makes a lot of sense.
Right. So that's where the technology is. And that's where I started really diving into and starting to understand a little bit better what blockchain is, how it actually fits into like even our business. Right. So I use, sorry for any title people, but I use title as an example. So think about D.R. Horton. D.R. Horton builds a house. Okay. And when they build the home, they record who the contractor for the concrete was. They record where the lumber came from. They record the electrical work, the cost of that. Everything is recorded on the blockchain. Okay. The first person that comes in and buys it, they see all the work that's been done, who did the work. Not that would matter, but it's all there. Okay. So now I bought that house and it's all recorded on the blockchain. Then 5 years later, I'm going to go sell my house again. All right. Well, now all I have to do is transfer that information to the next person. Okay. Because from the time that house came into inception, everything that's been done, every transaction that occurred, every repair that happened, everything that occurred on that home was recorded on the blockchain.
Okay.
And so now I don't need a title company anymore, because why do I need title insurance?
Right.
Because
it's all there.
It's all there.
And you can't counterfeit it.
And you can't counterfeit it. So what the blockchain ultimately does is it eliminates middlemen. And that's where I get a little fearful for my job a little bit, because I'm a bank, or I work for a bank. In that if you and I want to transact between each other, if I wanted to buy your shoes or something like that, and I send you $100, well, I can Zelle it, I can Bank of America, I can PayPal, I can do whatever. But I have to rely on a third party to get you that money, right?
Mm-hmm.
With the blockchain and with cold storage wallets and things of that nature, I can transfer that money directly to you with no middleman, no extra fees, no wait time, no nothing. Okay. So the use cases for this technology and what it has going forward is we don't even know, right? We haven't even scratched the surface on what it can do. It's like the internet in 1995.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Same thing. It's like, Dogecoin. Everybody, oh, Doge. Okay. Well, you probably are too young. There used to be have you ever heard of Netscape?
No.
Okay. So Netscape was a web browser that existed in the late 90s, early 2000s. Okay. Before Google, before, Safari, whatever, they all had it was a web search engine that existed. It was called Netscape. And I think it was produced by Microsoft maybe. And I used it all the time. Okay. Well, back then you could invest in Netscape. Say Netscape's going to be, the wave of the future, right? Well, if you'd invested in Netscape in 1995 and you never sold it, you'd be broke today because it's out of business and it doesn't exist anymore. Okay.
Right.
And there were 50, 100, 1,000 other similar businesses, similar websites, similar services that all were based around the technology of the World Wide Web that are no longer active anymore because their use case is gone. Where if you had invested in Amazon or you invested in Yahoo or you invested in Google back at that point, now you'd be a millionaire, depending on how
Right.
much money
Sure.
you put in, right? So that's what the crypto market is, because most cryptocurrencies are some form of a technology. So Ethereum,
Hmm.
which is the second largest cryptocurrency that
Yeah.
exists. Ethereum is a platform; it's not a currency. So whenever a company wants to build some sort of application on top of it to do transactions and do business to business things, they build it on top of the Ethereum platform. They use the Ethereum blockchain to record their transactions and operate within that realm, right? Well, Ether, which is the currency, is what is used on that platform to transact. So if I want to buy something from you and both of our businesses are on the Ethereum platform and we want to do commerce or do business with each other, we do business in Ethereum, okay, in Ether. So then when I want to get off the Ethereum platform because I want to take that and I want to go buy shoes at Walmart. Well, then I can trade my Ethereum for dollars or for Bitcoin or for whatever else, just like a currency, right? Because
Hmm.
if I'm traveling to Japan and I'm going to go stay there for a while, I need, their form of currency in order to exist there. So it's the same concept. So all of these different platforms have their own internal currency. It'd be like if Amazon had Amazon bucks, and anytime you wanted to buy or sell with another person on Amazon, you had to use Amazon bucks, but then you could take Amazon bucks out and go buy something else if you wanted to.
Right.
Right. So that's Ethereum. Well, then there's another thing called like Chainlink, which is an oracle that sits on top of the Ethereum platform that takes data and pushes it into the smart contracts, which is what Ethereum operates, that gets recorded on the blockchain. So there's these layers to how the technology works. So it's like an IP address for your computer, using a browser to search for stuff, going to Amazon and looking at their website, and it's these things that stack on top of each other. So all of these currencies, most of them, are basically a business, and they're trying to be the best business in that space that they can. So when people buy cryptocurrencies, they're really just buying stocks and businesses. Well, these stocks go up and down and up, especially in the tech world, because whenever you have hard times like recessions that come about, people get out of speculative things and they get into things that they feel more confident for.
Sure.
So if I'm an investor and I have a lot of money in Bitcoin and the economy's taking a dive, well, I'm going to take my money out of Bitcoin and I'm going to go buy Pepsi, or I'm going to go
Hmm.
buy, Berkshire Hathaway,
Hmm.
or something that's stood the test of time for the last 50 years,
Hmm.
right? So that's why when you see markets start to go down, you'll see the speculative markets crash heavier first, because heavy investors pull their money out and move it away.
Sure. Sure.
So the only thing, I see next year for cryptos as a place where there's going to be a ton of opportunity, but you have to understand the space. You got to know what you're buying and what you're selling and what you're doing. And you can't go into it just blind and not have any idea. But if you want to see growth, because if you look at the trajectory, and Bitcoin's a good example, they have these halving cycles, which I won't get into, but essentially it kind of creates more Bitcoin that's available to buy and sell. But whenever these cycles occur, you will see big spikes and big drawbacks. So they have, like, what just occurred. Now, the money, it was at $60,000 for one Bitcoin. And right now, I think today it's at like 17, 16 and a half. Well, that drawback's like 80%. Well, that's happened 5 times in the life of Bitcoin, and 5 different cycles where it's gone up 80, it's gone up dramatically. Now, again, it's all relative, right? It was 5 cents and it went up to $5, right?
Right.
Okay. And then
Yeah.
it came crashing back down. So, but now, because there's more users, there's more people involved. The whole Robinhood thing with, that app that became available where now you could buy and sell stuff. Retail people could get on there in 5 seconds and make a transaction. All of these things started to pile into the crypto space, which made it blow up. And then when you added leverage, which we've talked about, and said, okay, well, I bought $5,000 worth of Bitcoin. Well, Coinbase or FTX or Binance or any of these exchanges would go, I will lend you $2,500 so you could buy more Bitcoin. Okay. So my $5,000 worth of Bitcoin is now 7,500 because I bought more with it. Now it went up.
Sure.
But my original investment was only 5,000. Okay. And then it goes up again because everybody else is doing that, right? Everybody's leveraging. So then it goes up and up and up and up. Well, then somebody decides, something happens, black swan event, whatever, and it starts to go down. Okay. Well, the minute it starts to go down, depending on how much you've leveraged yourself, there's going to be margin calls. So it goes down, you're going to have a margin call. Well, if you have margin calls, you either have to sell or you have to put in more money. So most people, because these are mostly retail individuals, they're selling. So then you have this massive cascade down because most of it was built on leverage. Right. So you have these big swings, but it's a cycle just like anything else.
Sure.
And once you learn how to see the cycle and you learn how to read it and when to buy and when to sell and when to hold and when to move through that, and you understand the basis of the technology, you're not getting into speculative stuff like Dogecoin and Shiba and all these other ones that are just, meme coins is what they call them. Then you start to get a little bit better grasp on how that whole space works. But there are very few spaces, aside from real estate maybe, where you can have a dramatic growth of your money. You just have to be willing to go through the cycles and know how it all fits together
and understand it. Yeah.
Right. And that all goes back to education. So
Wow.
I know that was a long whatever, but
no, it was good. I learned a lot.
So I do think because of your level of understanding things and education and how much you base your investing stuff on it, I think you should just start looking into it.
Yeah,
because
I'll check it out.
I do think it is something that's going to be big. It already has been, and it's going to continue to grow. Sure. I don't know where it's going to be capped off. So, all right. Well, that is a really long time that we've been talking, and
I loved it though.
I really appreciate you coming in and doing this with me. Is there anything before we go? Because, like I told you, we're going to chop and dice all this stuff up and, try to get the word out to as many people as we can after we finish this up. But is there anything you want to end with? Is there something you want to promote? Is there anything you want to, say, hey, this is, if I'm telling you anything, this is what I want you to hear, anything like that you want to kind of part ways on?
Yeah, I'll definitely just plug my website again. It's goodgoodinvesting.com. And our podcast is Good Good Investing on all platforms. Our episodes are like 15 minutes.
They're it's not like this.
No, this is great. I love the long form too. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, so head on over to goodgoodinvesting.com. That's where you can get our You May Be Richer Than You Think net worth assessment, which is so fun. And then one parting thought I just want to say to whoever is listening to this, that success is for you.
Mm-hmm.
Success is for you. No matter where you came from, no matter who your parents are, no matter what your job is. We live in America. This is a fantastic country where you can, grow the life that you want, no matter where you're from. So success is for you. Don't be discouraged. There's no such thing as a fatal failure.
Right.
You can get back up and you can recover from absolutely anything. So yeah, that's what I want to leave the listeners with today.
Don't stop moving.
Don't stop moving. Keep on grooving.
That's right.
I love it.
Well, thank you, Rachel. I really appreciate your time. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Yeah.
We get a little deeper into things. So, I'm going to take a little break for maybe a week. I don't know. We'll be back. I've actually got Dana joining me next week on Friday. We're going to do a little New Year's prep, how to eat correctly and get yourself ready for your New Year's resolution so you take care of your body. So you're helping people take care of their financial health, and we're going to see if Dana can help me take care of my physical health. So
love it. She's good for that.
She's awesome. All right, guys. Thank you. We'll see you around, and y'all have a great holiday.
Thanks, guys.